of the AFC playoff race to see exactly how the Dolphins stack up with just a few games left to play.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Dolphins fans? Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins, your team every day here on the Locked On Network. Today is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. The Dolphins are getting ready to play the Buffalo Bills in Week 15 of the 2022 regular season. So we got some stuff to talk about. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Dolphins your first Miami Dolphins listen of the day. If you're unfamiliar, I'm Kyle Krabs, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, your host here on Locked On Dolphins, and a little anxious, I think, as we all are right now, looking at the 4-game stretch that's left to be played and understanding the magnitude of the games that are awaiting, and Miami being in a position that is unfortunately pretty familiar over the last couple of seasons, in the thick of it, but have to take care of business down the stretch. This is not a layup that the Dolphins are going to get into the postseason anymore. You know, it's sitting at 8-3. You're sitting here saying, okay, you just got to win 2 games. That's still true for the most part. We're going to be using 538 today, 538.com /2022-NFL-predictions. Has playoff probabilities, has all the remaining games. You can choose your own results and see what the outcomes are. So what I wanted to do is go through the AFC and look at the 4 games remaining for each of the teams, especially with some of the relevance of Miami in the playoff field. Because you can talk about probabilities, and you can go to 538 right now, and it says the Dolphins have a 70% chance to make the playoffs and a 7% chance to win the AFC East. But that doesn't really offer you context, right? And we'll see how the Dolphins adjust coming off of the last 2 games, and I still think the 49ers, as I've let it simmer, I think the 49ers game was just lack of execution. I think the Chargers game was a little bit more in the way of being outcoached, quite frankly. And I did appreciate, you listen to the coaches and the players talk after the game, and they talk about accountability and staying true to the process and just keep chopping wood and all these things. But if you listen to what they're saying and they're asked about the Chargers game, like Coach McDaniel said, relative to like our game plan and what we wanted to do, like this was our biggest miss of the season. And I'm paraphrasing what he said there, but I'm glad that that was said, because this, on Monday when we did the post-game show, the first thing I said was, generally speaking, I just want a team that I can be proud of every week. And for the first time, like it was Sunday Night Football against the Chargers was the first time that I was like, man, that's embarrassing. Like, okay, you don't execute against San Francisco. You shoot yourself in the foot. You say, dang, that was a missed opportunity. Well, the last 2 games have been missed opportunities. And now suddenly Miami has to go into Buffalo. So we go into Buffalo, right? And that obviously has some pretty significant magnitude for the Dolphins. As a matter of fact, when's the last time the Dolphins won in Buffalo? Dolphins, Bills. Make sure you guys can hear me pounding on the keys here, because it's been a minute. The Bills had won 7 in a row in general in head-to-head matchups between these 2 teams before the Dolphins won the first one. The last time that Miami won in Buffalo, ironically enough, an overtime win on Christmas Eve in 2016 when Jay Ajayi rushed for all those yards and the Dolphins put themselves in a position to go to the postseason. That's the last time the Dolphins made the playoffs. A little poetic, maybe. We'll see how Saturday night goes, because the Bills are getting their footing, but they haven't exactly been the juggernaut that we largely expected that they would be. They too have been out of rhythm at times. So if you want to draw some optimism, I am generally going to be pessimistic about this game going to Buffalo, cold weather environment. And maybe the Dolphins surprise us. And if they do, that is your last chance, right, to win the AFCs. Because let's start this conversation with the Bills and the Dolphins. And we're going to do the crossover Thursday with Joe Marino and Locked On Bills tomorrow on the show. But the Bills' final 4 are home against Miami, at Chicago, at Cincinnati, home against New England. You have to assume that Buffalo is going to beat the Bears, and they're probably going to beat the Patriots because they're going to be playing right now. They have a tiebreaker with the Chiefs for the 1 seed AFC. So that gives the Bills 12 wins, right? Your only pathway, if you were the Dolphins, to win the AFC East at this point is to beat the Bills and run the table and hope that the Bills lose to the Bengals. Because if that indeed does happen, and Miami runs the table, Miami indeed will win the AFC East at 12-5 with the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots and the Jets both sitting at 7-6. Of course, they both have games left against the Dolphins. That really is going to be the deciding factor. The question is, can the Dolphins slam the door shut before having 2 head-to-head games against AFC East divisional rivals? You'd certainly like to hope so. Other teams in the AFC playoff picture that are of concern, you obviously have the Los Angeles Chargers. We have the Titans at 7-6, but they're kind of a non-factor because you would have to hope that the Jaguars chase them down. And I don't necessarily know that that is going to happen. The Jaguars are 5-8. The Titans are 7-6. You have the Ravens and the Bengals at 9-4. If we're being honest, we want the Bengals to take the division because the Ravens are the team that you have the head-to-head tiebreaker against if you're talking wild card. Now, of course, if the Dolphins run the table and the Bills lose to the Bengals, it's kind of inconsequential. But the probability of that happening is slim. So we have to look at all of the avenues to make the postseason, right? I was really hoping we wouldn't be in this situation, but here's what I will say. If the Dolphins do go in to Buffalo and win, their chances of winning the division go from 7% to 30%, and their chances of making the playoffs go from 70 to 90, according to playoffpredictors.com. 10 is the magic number. And we're going to go through week by week. We're going to pick all the games for all the AFC teams. I'm going to talk about them to give you guys my best guess on how things are going to manifest from here, okay? Just because I know right now, losing 2 in a row, the offense looking the way that it does, it feels like we're back in week 6 again, and it feels like the Dolphins are never going to win another football game, and everybody's disjointed, and everybody's apprehensive, and everybody knows the history of the Dolphins in the late season. But I will say this Dolphins team, we talk about a young team that pressed, and I think the Dolphins pressed and played amplified and did too much against the last 2 opponents. We forget that this is a Dolphins team that the last 2 years under Brian Flores started egregiously slow and finished the year 7-1 last year and won late season games, going all the way back even to 2019. And I know there's not a lot of players that were on that team. You won in New England in a big upset. And in 2020, they started 1-3 and finished the year 9-3 across your last 12 games. So you can say same old Dolphins, but understand a lot of the players that are in-house that have been a part of this general rebuild have experienced late season success and wins with the Dolphins. But I get it. I feel the same way right now. It's like, man, are the Dolphins ever going to put it back together offensively? Eventually, yes. It ain't going to be as bad as it was against the Chargers, I promise. It's never as low as it feels, and it's never as high as it feels. And the last 2 weeks are a great reminder of that. So before we get into the game-by-game predictions and we kind of come up with how this is going to play out in our minds, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every potential new hire feels like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that is why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. That is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that you are going to love. That's why you'll be able to find a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion available right now as a bonus episode on Locked On Presents. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russell Wilson is a champion on the field, but off it, we rarely know the grind on the path to greatness. Each episode features interviews with Olympic medalists, NFL stars, and business leaders. And the hosts swap stories and share proven mental techniques that have gotten the world's most elite performers across the finish line and beyond. So head over to Locked On Presents for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcast. Now, Audible, get in the game. So, let's do this thing. We're going to go week by week. I think that's probably easier. We won't do the NFC games just for convenience and staying central here on Locked On Dolphins in the AFC and what's relevant. But you have the Bills against the Dolphins on Saturday night. And if you had to ask me, and this is probably just self-preservation speaking, I am conservatively going to pick the Bills to beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins, we were fortunate to kind of get the monkey off our back against the Bills early in the year. But there's just a lot of conditions. Now, would I be surprised if the Dolphins came out and played a really inspired football game? No, because I do think this is a team of quality character. I do think this is a team of quality coaching and quality players. And they are going to figure out. This is not a team that lacks talent. This is a team that is experiencing some new levels of adversity in some different ways that teams are playing them than what they faced all season long. And that requires coaching adjustments. But I think there's enough adversity that this team has been through in the first 3 months of the season that they're not going to buckle here. They're just not going to not show up. I have faith in that. Whether or not that's enough to win the game, I don't know. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm conservatively going to pick the Bills to win the football game, which will put the Dolphins at 8-6. How does that impact versus the rest of the AFC playoff field? Well, the Chiefs are playing the Texans, so you can go ahead and mark that down as a dub. The Bengals are at Tampa Bay, and I do think Cincinnati is playing hot right now. So much so that I would not be surprised at all if they go into Tampa Bay. The Bucs are a mess. They can't stop anybody on the ground. They just got lit up by the 49ers this past week. You can go ahead and mark me down for the Bengals to beat the Bucs. So that puts the Bills and Chiefs at 11-3, and it puts the Bengals at 10-4. What's really interesting is the Bengals still have a head-to-head against the Bills, and they already beat the Chiefs this season. So that's something to watch. Well, this Bengals team is dangerous right now. It's a quality loss for the Dolphins, especially in the context of, well, you didn't have our starting quarterback for more than half the game. The Ravens played the Browns in Cleveland. And I know, like, Deshaun Watson has looked horrible this season, right? As far as the first 2 games that he has played since he has returned from his suspension. But the Ravens have experienced multiple injuries to the quarterback position. We're probably not going to have Lamar Jackson again for this game. Tyler Huntley left the last game, a 2-point win against the Steelers. Call me crazy, but I think the Browns win that football game at home, which would make the Ravens 9-5. You have the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers. Here's what I am confident of. The Chargers, historically this season, have not stopped the run at all. What do the Titans do? They run the ball. I don't care that it's a home field advantage for the Chargers. I think the Chargers are primed for the letdown because they played a really inspired game with their playoff lives at stake against the Dolphins last week on a short week also, by the way, with the night game. Not as egregious as a Monday night game, but still shorter turnaround time. So give me the Titans to beat the Chargers. The Patriots are at Las Vegas against the Raiders. The Raiders can't win situational football games. It's one of the best things that the Patriots have done historically. So go ahead and mark me down for a Patriots win. And then you have the Jets, and the Jets are playing the Lions. I don't know if you guys have caught any Detroit football since the Dolphins played them, but they are hot. I think they're like 5-1 since playing the Dolphins. They just beat the Vikings last week. And call me crazy, but I do think they got DJ Chark back and Jamison Williams back at wide receiver. I think they can really get after the Jets. I don't trust the Jets to score points with consistency against the Lions. I think the Lions win that football game. So that drops the Jets to 7-7. A little bit further down, you have the Jaguars against the Cowboys. I'll take the Cowboys just to give the Jaguars a loss. The Colts against the Vikings. I'll give the Colts a loss. AFC teams, the Steelers against the Panthers. The Panthers are playing really well right now. And then the Broncos against the Cardinals without Kyler Murray. I'll give the Broncos a win. So, after picking all of the games in the AFC for Week 15, including Dolphins loss, so on and so forth, the Dolphins are at 8-6. They're tied with the Patriots at 8-6. You have the Chargers and the Jets at 7-7, and that is pretty much your cutoff because now the Jaguars have 9 wins, the Raiders have 9 wins. Everybody below, except for the Cleveland Browns at 6-8, have 9 wins. And if the Browns want to climb back in this thing, Godspeed to you because you know what? The Dolphins have a head-to-head there as well. So that really makes this, with 3 games to play now, a 4-team race in the AFC wildcard for 3 spots. And the Dolphins still have head-to-heads against both teams. And that includes a loss in Week 15 against the Bills. That's very important. The Bills in Week 16, they play the Bears. Justin Fields really coming on as a player, but I still think the Bills will take care of business in that football game. I think they've got the speed at linebacker to contain Fields. The Chiefs play the Seahawks. I will pick the Chiefs to win that game, but Seattle will be pressing because they've kind of dropped off. They're floating around 500, and they play the 49ers, who are threatening to run away with that division. So that'll be a big game for Seattle, but I will pick the Chiefs to win that game. The Bengals play at the Patriots. This is important because remember now, right now, it's the Patriots and the Dolphins at 8-6. I think the Bengals win the football game. I just think they have too much explosive talent offensively. And I understand that T. Higgins got bumped up with a hamstring and Tyler Boyd with his finger. That's fine. Jamar Chase is back. Joe Burrow's playing well. The offensive line's playing well. They're running the ball. So Samaje Perine's emerged for them. So give me the Bengals to beat the Patriots at New England as well. So that moves the Bengals to 11-4. It drops the Patriots to 8-7. The Ravens play the Falcons. The Falcons have just benched Marcus Mariota for Desmond Ridder, a rookie quarterback. I think the Ravens can take care of business there. That would make them 10-5. The Titans play the Texans. Again, the Titans are, with a win in the next 2 weeks, would clinch the AFC South. I think that's a probable outcome, but they're really non-relevant to this Dolphins discussion because they are on an island in the AFC South as the first place team and the only team with a winning record. The Dolphins are back home against the Packers. And the Packers have seen this emergence from Christian Watson at wide receiver, but the offensive line's not playing particularly well. The defense is really banged up. They've lost a lot of their high-level players up front, including Rashawn Gary. We're at the kind of the tipping point where Aaron Rodgers might decide he doesn't want to play if the Packers get eliminated from the playoffs this upcoming week. And the Packers this upcoming week play the LA Rams. So they'll probably win to move to 6-8. That's the probable outcome for them. But right now the Packers are sitting with like a 5% chance to make the playoffs. So culture feels like it's been bad there all year. Their best ability is their 2 backs. I think the Dolphins can handle Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon fairly well. Go ahead and put me down for a Dolphins win at home against the Packers. Come back home for a little home cooking. That's an important win because, again, remember, as far as we're concerned, 10 is the magic number. The Patriots, we've already got down as a loss for Cincinnati, so that puts the Dolphins at 9-6. The Patriots are now 8-7. The Chargers play the Colts. That's going to be a win for them. The Jets play the Jaguars. I'll put them down as a win for that. And then the rest of these, Raiders are 9-loss team. Kind of inconsequential games. The Browns play the Saints at home. The Saints, a warm weather team, indoor team coming up to play the Browns in Cleveland. I'm picking the Browns to win the next 2. They're suddenly 7-8. They're kind of floating around 500. And then the Broncos versus the Rams, an inconsequential game for us. So picking all the AFC games through week 16 now. You have the Bills and Chiefs at 12-3. You have the Bengals at 11-4, first place in the AFC South. or AFC North. And then you have the Titans at 9-6. Those are your division leaders. You have the Baltimore Ravens at 10-5, the Dolphins at 9-6, and then you have the Chargers and the Patriots both at 8-7, along with the Jets. Remember, now the Dolphins are a game up with 3 to play and head-to-heads in 2 of these matchups. That Packers game is huge in this scenario that we're laying out. We're picking all the games to the best of our ability. Before we go any further, you could probably get some good odds over at BetOnline for whether or not the Dolphins make the playoffs. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball World Cup. We've got it all over at BetOnline. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. The fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So this is where things do get dicey. You know, we are at the 2 games to go margin. It's still a 4-team race for 3 playoff spots in the wild card. I have the Dolphins 1-1 over these next 2 games and 2 AFC East playoff matchups awaiting, including at New England in Week 17. So let's start at the top. The Bills, they're at the Bengals. Call me crazy, but I think the Bengals can win this football game, especially if we get T. Higgins back at 100%. I'm going to mark the Bengals down for the win. The Chiefs play the Denver Broncos. Put me down for a Chiefs win. Unfortunately, the Broncos, their season is completely off the rails, and Russell Wilson just had a concussion, and it's not going well. Our next AFC matchup, the Ravens are playing the Steelers again. It is in Baltimore. Ravens won in Pittsburgh. Go ahead and put me down for a win for the Ravens in that matchup. But they are now 1 game to play head-to-head with the Bengals in Week 18. Winner of that game is going to decide who wins the AFC North. And Dolphins fans will obviously be rooting for the Bengals because, as we see if we play this out, if the Dolphins run the table with the last 2 games and go 3-1 over the final 4, they can get up into the 5 seed. And the 5 seed is clutch because that's where you would go to Nashville and play the Titans. Not to put the cart ahead of the horse here. The Titans are playing the Dallas Cowboys. Put me down for a Cowboys win. That puts the Titans, having already clinched the AFC South, at 9-7, losing to Dallas in Week 17. The Dolphins are at New England. It's going to be a tough game, but I do find some solace in the Dolphins will have played a few cold weather games. Tua Tagovailoa obviously has well-documented success against the New England Patriots. It's one of the blessings and gifts of the Brian Flores-Tua Tagovailoa marriage was that Tua practiced against this kind of defense every day, right? You would imagine he will continue to see this defense well. I do think the Dolphins have a significant talent advantage. We'll see what the weather could be the wild card here, but right now you can put me down for a Dolphins win. That puts the Dolphins at over 95% chance to make the playoffs, and they could feasibly clinch here depending on how picking some of these other games goes. Patriots are now 8-8, so the Dolphins have a 2-game lead on them. The Patriots will not pass them. The Chargers play the Los Angeles Rams. That is a win for the Chargers. That puts the Chargers at 9-7, a game behind the Dolphins. The Rams are just so beat up, like you'd have to get Cooper Kupp back, and I don't think they're going to risk that in a lost season. Our next interesting game is the Jets go to Seattle to play the Seahawks. And Seattle can run the ball now. They can really get after you on the ground. Seattle has weapons in the passing game. It's in Seattle. It's probably going to be super cold. The team that can run the ball better is probably going to win the football game. In my mind, that is the Seattle Seahawks. So that clinches a playoff spot for the Dolphins with a game left to play. 10's the magic number. I have Dolphins down for wins, Packers and Patriots. And predictively picking the rest of the games, the Dolphins have clinched a playoff spot going into Week 18. Wouldn't that be a nice change? To not be eliminated in Week 17, but to clinch in Week 17. Because that puts the Dolphins and the Chargers above the Patriots and the Jets, and the Jets and Patriots are both 8-8 with a game left to play. So the Chargers have something to play for. The Chargers only have an 82% clinch chance in this scenario, having picked the games. I'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the AFC games that are inconsequential to this discussion. Browns might screw around and get a winning record when it's all said and done, which is crazy. Okay. So through 17 weeks, 6 of the 7 AFC wildcard or AFC playoff spots are filled. It is Chargers with a game lead against the Jets and the Patriots. The Dolphins very much have playoff seeding up or down at their mercy. They could finish as the 7 seed, depending on if they lose to the Jets and the Chargers beat the Broncos, which I think the Chargers will beat the Broncos. So I'll go ahead and fill that one in now. And Chargers clinch the last playoff spot. But if the Bengals beat the Ravens in week 18 and the Dolphins beat the Jets, the teams both finish 11-6. That would push the Dolphins to the 5 seed. If the Dolphins lose to the Jets and finish 10-7, they would be the 7 seed and have to play the 2 seed. Who's the 2 seed? Well, let's finish what we started and go through the rest of the exercise. The Bills play the Patriots. They're a game behind the Chiefs. They're going to have to play hard. I think they win the game. I've already picked the Bengals to beat the Ravens and win the North. But that puts them also 13-4 along with the Bills. The Chiefs are 13-3. I do think they beat the Vegas Raiders in week 18 because they do not have head-to-head tiebreaker against either of these teams. The Chiefs have to win or else they will lose the bye. So I have the Chiefs as the 1 seed at 14-3. I have the Bengals as the 2 seed at 13-4. The Bills are the 3 seed at 13-4. The Titans, I do think they beat the Jaguars after getting their butts kicked the first time around. Win the South at 10-7. They are the 4 seed. I think the Dolphins are going to get some comeuppance against the Jets from the first time around. So I think they do close the season with 3 wins here. The fact that the Packers and Jets are at home is incredibly advantageous. The Patriots are the team that if you had to play a road game, you'd want to play because the Dolphins have had so much success matching up directly against them. Now, law of averages, be wary. But here's the deal. Even if the Dolphins lose that game with every other game that we've picked, and they just beat the Packers and the Jets, they're still in the playoffs. They just happen to be the 7 seed. But if I'm going predictively, I have the Dolphins at 11-6, finishing as the 5 seed in front of the Ravens and going to Nashville to play the Titans in the first round of the playoffs. And then your other matchups, you would have the Chiefs on the bye, you would have the Bengals against the Chargers, and you would have the Bills against the Ravens. So what's at stake? 10 wins is the magic number. You've got 2 chances. You've got 2 home games. You've got 2 divisional opponents. 3-1 would just so happen to get you the 5 seed. And oh, by the way, with all the other games that we picked, if the Dolphins did actually win in week 15 against the Bills, and they do run the table, having picked all the other games, they would win the AFC East. And they would be the 3 seed. And they would have a home playoff game. And they would play the Bills would be the 5 seed at 12-5. So you'd play the Ravens at home, would be the scenario there. So listen, I know this is tough sledding right now. You know, we're pretty shook over the last 2 weeks. But I hope this exercise kind of just illustrates how everything you want is still directly out in front of you, even with a loss in week 15 to the Bills, which is what I'm mentally preparing myself for. And hopefully the Dolphins take us by surprise, because if they do, then you can gear back up and you say, look, run the table. We're big Bengals fans the rest of the way. And that regardless, we're big Bengals fans the rest of the way, would either put you in a position where you are, if you beat the Bills, the 3 seed and you have a home playoff game and could win the East, or potentially if you take care of business after this week with the tough road game in Buffalo, you could be the 5 seed and go to Nashville and play the Titans. It's all out in front of us. Trust the porpoise, trust the process, trust the podcast here on Locked On Dolphins, your team every day. Let's keep chopping wood. Just like Tua Tagovailoa said to Mike McDaniel, we're just going to keep chopping wood here on the show. We got crossover Thursday tomorrow, so look forward to that. Kyle Krabs, thanks for checking out the show. Fins up.